All right. Okay, it's up now. So when Srikanth was kind enough to invite me and say that, like, why don't you speak about it, I was a little apprehensive, saying that, hey, all the people who speak here are, like, publishers at scale. They have, like, millions of page views, and, like, we are nowhere near that. And, like, we don't even, like, look at page views. But he was like, no, 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 subscription-based business models are it, and you must come and talk. So thank you for that, Srikanth. I'll try to keep this very quick, and, like, so I don't want to bore you folks, with, I'm sorry I have a deck, but we already had one, so I didn't want to kind of reinvent the wheel and, like, speak extempo. So very quickly, we are a completely subscription-driven business news site. We started in October 2016. Like Srikanth said, we charge a decent amount. We charge about 2,750 now plus GST, so it's effectively gone up to 3,245 for a year. And we only give one article a day, right? So, and that one article a day is a fairly in-depth article on business, startups, technology, science, and healthcare. We rotate between these spaces. And we are unapologetically subscription-driven, and all of our content is behind a paywall. So that's what we are. Why did we start? And, like, we are all 3 out of the 4 co-founders. We are former journalists. We used to work with Forbes India, and then we went a bunch of different places and came back. We could see ourselves as news consumers that, like, especially in the space of business news, we'd reached a point where there was far too much that we were getting, and it was reaching a point where it was noise. I couldn't really figure out what's true, what's not, what's an exclusive, what's in-depth. That analysis was missing. So I think we'd long crossed the point where we felt that, hey, I want more. If I pay you money, I want more and more. I think especially the people, professionals, entrepreneurs, founders, investors, etc. They were like, give me lesser stuff, but give me stuff that I can trust and use to kind of make a decision. That's where we essentially started from. We felt that noise was there, and the ad-funded business model wasn't really working. So we said, hey, can we try this in India as well? We started, 2 out of the 4 of us are engineers. So we started with, like, let's formulate a hypothesis and let's see if, and our hypothesis was, look, this model, a subscription-based model, is already working, in Western markets, in developed markets. Even a limited versions, like, I'll just give you 1 article a day, but I'll charge you for it, is already being tried by folks like The Information and Stratechery. I mean, Stratechery charges $10 a month, The Information charges $400 a year. So we could see that, look, it's already happening in the West. So it's not that we are coming up with something completely new. So it was only a question of, will this work in India? And, that was one part of it. So we felt that given India's size, and, I mean, unlike Rocket Post, I mean, we are fairly urban-centric. Most of our readers come from Bangalore, within India, from Bangalore, Delhi, and Bombay. We feel that there's a sizable audience in the hundreds of thousands at least who can afford to pay close to 3,000 rupees a year. Frankly, it's never about, the ability of Indians to afford to pay for news, but it's about, do they see that news is a product that they want to pay for? And, there would also be a sizable percentage of people who may not yet be ready to pay for it, but they want in-depth features, in-depth analysis and all that. So, could we figure out a way to, publish to them as well? And that was the initial hypothesis, that can we do it? It's happening in other countries. Can we bring this to India? Basis that, and then, we said, why are we doing a subscriber model? And I think, while I was listening to Rocket Post's founder speak, I think many of the things that he spoke about are exactly the same for us, even though we're completely different, right? One, why am I a subscriber model? Because that's the ultimate, like, when someone pays you money, it shows that that person feels that what you're doing has value. So I think that's a moment of truth that I think journalism has run away for far too long, where we feel that if I charge people money, they will not read me. Well, I think that hides the fundamental problem that probably what you're creating or publishing then is not worth paying for. That's a problem, right? And the second thing is, every morning we are wondering when we publish an article, is this something good enough? Is this something that people will come and say, I want to subscribe and pay you money for it? And lastly, I think, again, the point that he mentioned about pressure from advertisers. We've seen personally in our careers how, like, advertisers and brands have interfered with the editorial operations, and we didn't want that to happen at all. And I think on that count, just like, his subscribers support him, our subscribers support us to do fearless, free, independent business journalism. Very quickly, how we started about, again, as I said, just to give you an idea of like, when you start something completely new in a space in India, how do you go about it? We started doing long form features and said, will people pay for it, right? And we are nowhere to know, because when we went and started talking to people and saying, are you going to pay us money? They were like, no, we will not pay you money. Who pays for money in India? Indians don't pay for news. Look at how much we pay for newspapers. I've never paid for news, right? So we said, all right, will you read long form features? We started writing long form features and people were reading it and talking about it. Then we said, all right, will you give us your email if you want to read these? And then we put all our articles behind an email wall. And a bunch of people said, oh, all right, I'll give you my emails. And a lot of people said, no, I won't give you my email. Why do you want my email? Are you going to sell it? And all of that stuff. But anyway, the point is that was proven as well. Finally, we said, all right, people want to read long form features. People want to give us their email. So the next final question is, will they pay us, right? And that's what we essentially did. So very quickly, our, our model is fairly organically evolved. What we do is every morning at 8 o'clock, we publish an original story. Our stories range from about 2,000, 2,500 words to sometimes going up to 5,000 words and all that. It's not something that we're proud of, the length of our stories, but that's another matter. At 5 minutes later, a very customized email goes out to all of our subscribers, written by a different founder each day, which essentially hooks them and entices them to that day's story, saying that this is why this story is important. This is why you should read. And that email is our organic marketing effort, right? So, I mean, we haven't spent anything on like, marketing till date. And all of our acquisition happens through an organic route, of which our emails are the most important. So our newsletter today, I mean, every morning hits roughly about 20,000 subscribers. And coincidentally, that's our subscriber base. We've got a mix of free and paid subscribers, totaling to about 20,000, of which the paying subscribers are in the low single-digit thousands. That's what we disclosed in a Neiman Lab article, so I'm happy to kind of stick to that number here as well. We're unapologetically revenue-driven. Again, that's another thing that people in India, especially journalists, are very diffident about, that like, how can you say that like you want money and you run for money? But I think the reality is that if you do not think about a revenue model as a news operation, sooner or later you will have to compromise, like in some way or the other. Because fundamentally news is a business and you have to run it, right? So the bulk of our revenue comes from direct subscribers, people who pay us to become individual subscribers. Plus, of late, we've also started corporate plans and institutional plans where organizations can buy, bulk subscriptions from us at discounted rates. I mean, there's a great organization in Bombay, for instance, that bought 100 subscriptions, one for every one of its employees, right? So I hope there are more such people like that. But anyway, that's our revenue model. Our demographics, as you can kind of expect, we have a fairly urban, business professional, technology, finance, this kind of bias towards our demographics, and that's to be expected. We're very focused, I mean, almost like, laser sharp in what we will do. We reject more stuff, like, we do not do stuff on politics, on culture, like, even most of the stuff that, like, we do is from a very sharp window, and because that's ultimately a remit. When someone pays me close to 3,000 rupees a year, it's based on a promise that every morning I can expect you folks to cover this space. So the moment we essentially meander outside that, because as journalists, I can tell you that we all love doing these alternate features. Hey, I got this really, great idea about something else, which I'm sure people will love. And we tried some of those experiments early on, but we essentially found that a bulk of people, and one great thing, again, common with Rocket Post is because we've got a direct connect with our subscribers. We email them every day by name, right? So people write back to us. Literally every day we have people writing back to us as founders saying that today's story was great, or it was missing this point, or how about, I mean, there are tips, there are criticisms saying that this was not the Ken story. And I remember when we started, one of my colleagues, Ashish, had done a fantastic 10,000 word story on a Facebook imposter, right? A couple of weeks after that, we did a story, and one of our subscribers wrote back saying that, when I subscribed, I thought you're going to do those kind of stories. And I'm like, look, you really think we can do a 10,000 word? That's like a mini book, right? Every day. So, but again, the point is expectations. this is just, I'm sorry, as I said, these slides look very corporate-ish and all that, so I'm sorry about it, I didn't make it. I'll just end with this. We were fortunate enough to have been covered by TechCrunch, by Neiman Lab. We were fortunate enough to have subscribers like, Nandan Nilekani, a bunch of folks like, CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs. Again, it's also because the news that we cover is of use if you're a professional. But I think I'd like to just end this by saying that one point that we were surprised with was when we started, we didn't feel that millennials, will pay for news, because that was the conventional wisdom that young people do not pay for news, they've never got a habit. And, counterintuitively, what we've figured out is that as we've gone along, it's actually the millennials, especially a bunch of folks studying in colleges who write to us and saying, can you give us a student discount? We love what you're doing. They're actually all right paying for news, and the reason is because they don't have this institutional memory of having never paid for news and of having disposed of stacks of newspapers as raddi, growing up, right? It's us, the older generation, who comes with that, I never pay for news. The younger generation is fine. They're paying for, Netflix, they're paying for Dropbox, they're paying for Ghana. So they just see this as another service that they can pay for if you can provide them value for it. So, I think that's what it is. That's our last slide. Thank you for giving me your time today morning. And there's a later session on which I can share some more information. Thanks.